You'll always be the woman who needed me to get where you are, Marcus hissed, his words cutting through the elegant murmur of the gala. Natasha stood tall in her midnight blue gown, award clutched in her hand, as she looked her ex-husband directly in the eyes. No, Marcus, I'm the woman who succeeded despite you. There's a significant difference. Welcome to Mr. Cael Stories, where romance meets reality. Today's tale explores what happens when a woman rediscovers her worth after years of being diminished. Have you ever felt yourself slowly disappearing in someone else's shadow? When Natasha married wealthy venture capitalist Marcus Montgomery, she never imagined he would systematically erase everything that made her special. Her talent, her dreams, her very existence, all carefully hidden from his elite social circle. But what happens when one chance meeting reignites the spark that's been suffocated for years? When the woman who was told she wasn't enough suddenly discovers she's extraordinary? Would you have the courage to walk away from comfort, to reclaim your identity, to build something beautiful from the ashes of what was lost? If you're ready for a story about second chances, true love, and the power of remembering who you are, stay with me. Like this video, subscribe for more, and let's begin our journey. The marble floors of the Gatsby Hotel ballroom gleamed under crystal chandeliers as Natasha Montgomery stood in the corner, champagne flute untouched. Her husband, Marcus Montgomery III, worked the room with practiced ease, smiling, shaking hands, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. The perfect picture of old money confidence. It's almost impressive, she thought, watching him, the way he can make everyone feel important while making me feel invisible. 3 years earlier, she'd been Natasha Reeves, a 26-year-old architectural intern with dreams larger than her bank account and a laugh that filled rooms. Now at 29, she barely recognized herself. Marcus, introduce us to your lovely companion. A silver-haired man approached with his wife, both dripping in wealth. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. This is Natasha, my wife. The way he said wife made it sound like an admission of guilt. Charming, the woman said, eyes scanning Natasha's simple black dress. And what do you do, dear? I'm an architect. She stays home mostly, Marcus interrupted smoothly. Takes care of our household. You know how it is. The couple nodded knowingly and drifted away, leaving Natasha with the bitter taste of another small erasure. Back in their penthouse that night, Marcus loosened his tie. His reflection multiplied in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. You were embarrassing tonight, he said flatly. Natasha looked up from removing her earrings. I barely spoke. Exactly. You just stood there. Do you know how that reflects on me? She turned to face him. How should I have acted? Like you belong. Like you're worthy of being in those rooms. And am I? Worthy? The pause before his answer stretched painfully. You could be, he finally replied. If you tried harder, if you lost 10 pounds, if you didn't talk about architecture like some obsessed amateur. Natasha's chest tightened. Why did you marry me if I'm such a disappointment? Because I thought you'd grow into the role. I thought you'd become someone I could be proud to show off. That night, Natasha lay awake, while Marcus slept beside her, physically close but emotionally miles away. She remembered his charm when they'd met, how he'd seemed fascinated by her passion for creating spaces that made people feel alive. 6 months after meeting, they'd married in the Hamptons. Small ceremony, his family barely smiled in the photos. Now she understood why. If you've ever felt someone trying to change who you are, give this video a thumbs up. Your story matters, and so does Natasha's. The next morning, breakfast arrived with cutting remarks. You mentioned a gallery opening tonight? Marcus said, scrolling through emails on his phone. Yes. Architectural photography. I thought I might. You're not going to that, he said without looking up. Why not? Because I said so. Besides, you'd embarrass yourself. Those people are serious professionals, Tasha. You're not there yet. The woman who'd once stayed up until dawn designing community centers had slowly been erased, replaced by someone who arranged flowers and pretended not to hear when Marcus made jokes about the old ball and chain. Later that week, at another event, Natasha noticed a woman watching her. Tall, elegant, with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that seemed to see through walls. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else, the woman said, approaching with confidence. Natasha managed a weak smile. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's been there. She extended her hand. Vivian Laurent. I run an architectural firm in Soho. Natasha's heart stuttered. Laurent and Associates? I know your work. The Community Arts Center in Brooklyn, the Sustainable Housing Project in Queens. You have a good eye. Vivienne's smile was warm, genuine. Let me guess, you're an architect. I trained as one. I don't really practice anymore. Why not? The simple question felt like a crack in a dam. Natasha glanced at Marcus, still performing for his audience. Life got complicated. Vivienne followed her gaze, and understanding flickered across her face. I see. Well, here's my card. When life gets less complicated, and it will call me. She walked away before Natasha could respond, leaving a business card that felt like a lifeline in her palm. The Laurent and Associates office occupied the third floor of a converted warehouse in Soho, all exposed brick and natural light. Natasha stood outside for 10 minutes, clutching her portfolio, before finally pressing the buzzer. Come up, Vivienne's voice crackled through the intercom. The studio was everything Natasha remembered loving about architecture: drafting tables covered in sketches, scale models scattered across surfaces, the smell of coffee and paper and creative energy. Vivienne looked up from a blueprint. You came. I almost didn't. But you did. That's what matters. She gestured to a chair. Show me your work. Natasha's laptop felt heavy as she opened it. I haven't designed anything in 2 years. Show me what you did before. The portfolio revealed projects prioritizing human connection over aesthetics, community centers, libraries, affordable housing that invited gathering and healing. Vivienne studied every page in silence. When she finally looked up, her expression was serious. You're extraordinary, she said, and you know it, which makes me wonder why you're not designing anymore. Natasha's throat tightened. My husband thinks. I didn't ask what your husband thinks. I asked why you're not designing. The distinction felt revolutionary. Because somewhere along the way, I forgot I could, Natasha whispered. Sometimes all it takes is one person to help us remember our worth. Comment below about someone who believed in you when you'd stopped believing in yourself. I'm curating an exhibition next month, Emerging Architects Reimagining Public Spaces. I want you to submit something, Vivienne said. I can't. Not can't. Won't. There's a difference. Natasha looked at her hands. Marcus's voice echoed. You're not serious. You're amateur. You're embarrassing. What if I'm not good enough anymore? Then you'll find out. But my guess? You're better than you ever were. Because now you know what it feels like to lose yourself. That gives you perspective. Most architects never develop. Natasha left with a deadline, 4 weeks, to design something that mattered and a feeling she'd almost forgotten. Purpose. She didn't tell Marcus. Instead, she worked in stolen hours, early mornings before he woke, afternoons when he was at the office, late nights after he'd retreated to his study. The design emerged. A community wellness center for a forgotten neighborhood in the Bronx. Not just a building, but a statement about who deserved beautiful spaces. Meditation rooms flooded with natural light, community kitchens, art studios, gardens on the roof. Every line felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. 3 weeks in, Marcus discovered her sketches. What's this? He stood in the doorway of her small home office, holding one of her drawings. Natasha's heart raced. A project I'm working on. For what? An exhibition. His laugh was sharp. An exhibition? Natasha, you're not a professional architect. I was trained. Training and talent are different things. This is, he waved the sketch dismissively, amateur hour. You'll embarrass yourself. More importantly, you'll embarrass me. Something in Natasha hardened. Then don't come. His eyes narrowed. Excuse me? To the exhibition. Don't come. That way you won't be embarrassed. You're not submitting this. Yes, I am. His words came calculated to wound. Look at yourself. You're delusional. You're a housewife playing architect. No one will take this seriously. No one will take you seriously. Natasha stood slowly, gathering her sketches. Maybe, but I'm going to find out. The exhibition opening arrived. Natasha stood in the gallery, her design displayed alongside 15 other emerging architects. Her hands trembled as early arrivals filtered in critics, established architects, journalists. Marcus had refused to attend. I won't watch you humiliate us, he'd said that morning. She'd left the apartment without responding. Now, surrounded by strangers studying her work, Natasha felt simultaneously exposed and free. This is breathtaking. Natasha turned to find a man studying her design, late 30s. Dark eyes, the kind of focused intensity that suggested he actually saw what he was looking at. "Thank you," she managed. "The way you've integrated green space with community function. It's not just architecture, it's healing." He extended his hand. "Julian Moretti. I write for Architectural Digest." Her heart skipped. "Natasha Montgomery. The emotional intelligence in this design is remarkable. Most emerging architects focus on aesthetics or innovation. You're focused on human need. That's rare." They talked for 20 minutes about philosophy, about designing for forgotten communities, about architecture as activism. Julian listened with complete attention, asked questions that made her think deeper, challenged her assumptions in ways that felt collaborative rather than combative. "I'd love to feature this in our Emerging Voices series," he said finally. "Would you be open to an interview?" Yes, absolutely." He smiled, warm, genuine, nothing like Marcus's calculated expressions. "Excellent. Here's my card. Call me next week." Some connections change everything. Share this video with someone who might need inspiration to follow their dreams today. As Julian walked away, Vivian appeared at Natasha's elbow. "That," she said quietly, "is what happens when you remember who you are." The evening passed in a blur of conversations and possibilities. 3 firms requested her portfolio. A nonprofit director asked if she'd consult on a shelter redesign. A gallery owner discussed a solo show. By midnight, Natasha's phone was full of new contacts, and her heart full of something she'd almost forgotten: hope. Marcus waited in the living room, whiskey in hand. "So?" His tone suggested he expected confirmation of her failure. "It went well." "Define well." "Architectural Digest wants to feature my work." Silence. Then, "That's good." But his face said she'd crossed an invisible line, stepped out of the box he'd built for her. "Marcus, I want to go back to work." "Really work?" "Vivian offered me a position at her firm." "Absolutely not." "Why?" "Because you're my wife. We have a certain lifestyle, certain expectations." "Your expectations." "Ours," he insisted. But they both knew it was a lie. Natasha looked at the man she'd married and felt nothing but distance. "I'm taking the position. Then you're choosing to end this marriage." The ultimatum hung between them like smoke. "Maybe," Natasha said softly. "I'm choosing to start my life." She walked upstairs, packed a bag, and called Vivienne. "Do you still have that spare room you mentioned?" she asked. "Always." "Come home, Natasha." The divorce took 6 months, 6 months of lawyers and arguments, and Marcus trying to control the narrative. He told their social circle she'd abandoned him for a career. He told his family she'd been ungrateful for everything he'd provided. Natasha stopped caring what stories he told. She moved into a small loft in Soho, took the position at Laurent and Associates, and threw herself into work with the intensity of someone making up for lost time. The Architectural Digest feature came out 3 months later. Her phone didn't stop ringing for a week. And through it all, Julian Moretti kept appearing at gallery openings, industry events, coffee shops near her office. Their conversations evolved from professional to personal, from friendly to something else entirely. "You're different," he said one evening over wine at a bistro in the West Village. "From when we first met." "How so?" "You take up space now. You don't apologize for existing." Natasha smiled. "I'm remembering how it suits you." Their eyes met across the table, and the air between them shifted, charged, aware, inevitable. "Julian." "I know," he said quietly. "Your divorce isn't final yet. I'm not asking for anything you can't give. I want you to know I see you, the real you, and she's extraordinary." The words settled into Natasha's chest like warmth, like coming home. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in November. Natasha signed the papers in her lawyer's office, handed back Marcus's last name, and walked out into the crisp autumn air, feeling lighter than she had in years. Julian was waiting outside, leaning against a lamppost with 2 cups of coffee. "How does it feel?" he asked, handing her one. "Like I can finally breathe." They walked through Washington Square Park, leaves crunching under their feet. Julian understood the value of quiet, didn't try to fill every moment with words or expectations. "There's something I want to show you," he said as they reached the park's edge. "What?" "Trust me." She looked at him, this man, who'd appeared in her life at exactly the right moment, who'd never asked her to be anything other than herself, and nodded. Freedom comes in many forms. Double tap that subscribe button if you're rooting for Natasha to find hers. They took the subway to Brooklyn. emerging in a neighborhood Natasha didn't recognize. Julian led her to a vacant lot between two brownstones. "This," he said, "belongs to a community coalition I work with. They want to build something meaningful here. And I recommended you as the architect." Natasha stared at the space, not large but full of possibility. Her mind was already sketching. Clean lines, natural materials, spaces that invited gathering. "Julian, they have funding. They have vision. They just need someone who understands that architecture is about people, not prestige." He turned to face her. "That's you, Natasha. That's who you've always been." The late afternoon sun caught in his dark hair, and Natasha felt something shift in her chest, not the desperate, anxious need she'd felt with Marcus, but something steadier, deeper. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "Because I believe in your work." He paused. "And because I believe in you, Julian." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his brown eyes. "I know we've been dancing around this. I know you've been rebuilding yourself, and I respect that. But Natasha, I need you to know, I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready, if you're ready, I'll be here." Her hand found his, fingers interlacing. "What if I'm still figuring out who I am? Then I'll wait while you figure it out. I'll wait as long as it takes." Their kiss happened naturally, soft at first, tentative, then deepening as months of tension and longing found release. Julian's hand cupped her face with such gentleness it almost hurt, like he was holding something precious. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Natasha rested her forehead against his. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "Of losing myself again. Of becoming what someone else needs instead of who I am." Julian's thumb traced her cheekbone. "I don't want you to become anything, Natasha. I just want you, exactly as you are." 6 months later, Natasha's design for the Brooklyn Community Center was completed. The project combined daycare facilities, senior services, art studios, and gathering spaces. It was featured in the New York Times, Dwell, and Metropolis. When the American Institute of Architects announced she would receive their Emerging Architect Award, Julian celebrated by cooking dinner in his apartment, pasta, and wine and candlelight. "How does it feel?" he asked as they sat on his couch, her feet in his lap. "Surreal. 3 years ago, I couldn't imagine being here. 3 years ago, you were surviving. Now you're living." She looked at this man who'd walked into her life at her lowest point and never once asked her to be anything other than herself. "I love you," she said, the first time she'd said it aloud. Julian's smile was soft, certain. "I know. I've loved you since that first night at the exhibition when you talked about architecture like it was poetry. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you needed to find yourself first. I could wait." The American Institute of Architects Gala was the event of the season. 500 of the industry's most influential figures gathered at the Plaza Hotel. Natasha stood backstage, smoothing down her midnight blue gown. "You're being honored," Vivienne had said. "Dress like you own the room." Tonight, she was receiving the Emerging Architect Award for her Brooklyn Community Center design. In the audience sat Marcus. She'd seen his name on the sponsor list. "You ready?" Julian appeared in his tuxedo. "Surprisingly, yes." He kissed her temple. "You've earned this. Every bit of it. Sometimes the greatest revenge is success." Hit that like button if you're ready to see Natasha claim her moment. The ballroom was magnificent crystal chandeliers, round tables draped in white linen, the city glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows. As Natasha's name was announced, she walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. And there, at a front table, sat Marcus. Older somehow, harder around the edges, flanked by colleagues who'd probably never heard her name until tonight. Their eyes met across the room. His face registered shock, then something darker, the realization that she'd not just survived without him, she'd thrived. Natasha accepted the Crystal Award and approached the microphone. 3 years ago, she began, her voice steady, "I forgot how to design. I forgot because someone convinced me I wasn't good enough. That my ideas were amateur. That I should make myself smaller to fit into spaces that were never meant for me." The room was silent. "I'm not here tonight to talk about that person or that time. I'm here to talk about the moment I remembered who I was, an architect who believes buildings should serve the people who use them, especially those people our industry often overlooks." She talked about the Brooklyn project, about the single mothers who now had childcare, the elderly residents who had a place to gather, the teenagers who had studio space to create. Architecture isn't about ego or prestige. It's about creating spaces where human beings can become their best selves. Thank you for recognizing that vision. As she left the stage, the applause was deafening. Marcus intercepted her near the back hallway. Natasha. She turned, unsurprised. Marcus. That was quite a speech. Thank you. He shifted uncomfortably. Look, I know things ended badly between us. You mean when you gave me an ultimatum to stop being an architect or stop being your wife? His jaw tightened. I was trying to protect you from failure. No, Natasha said calmly. You were trying to keep me small because my success threatened you. There's a difference. That's not. He stopped, seeming to really see her for the first time. The confidence in her posture, the light in her eyes, the success he'd told her she'd never achieve. You look different. I am different. I'm who I was always supposed to be. Julian appeared then, placing a protective hand on the small of her back. Marcus's eyes narrowed. This is Julian Moretti, Natasha said. Julian, my ex-husband, Marcus Montgomery. The men shook hands with territorial stiffness. I know your work, Marcus said to Julian, unable to hide the edge in his voice. Architectural criticism. Must be easy critiquing what others create. Julian smiled smoothly. Not as easy as criticizing your own wife out of existence, but you'd know more about that than me. Marcus's face reddened. Natasha placed her hand on Julian's arm. We should get back to our table. As they walked away, Marcus called out, You'll always be the woman who needed me to get where you are. Natasha stopped, turned back. No, Marcus. I'm the woman who succeeded despite you. There's a significant difference. She didn't wait for his response. 1 year later, Natasha was invited to consult on the stage design for New York Fashion Week. An avant-garde designer wanted a runway that challenged conventional space, something that reflected urban resilience and feminine power. Natasha created a structure that was part sculpture, part social commentary. A runway that elevated from street level to penthouse, symbolizing the rise from invisible to undeniable. When the show was featured in Vogue, the headline read, Architect Natasha Reeves redesigns not just spaces, but narratives. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps our channel grow and allows us to bring more inspiring stories like Natasha's. 2 years after leaving Marcus, Natasha married Julian in a small ceremony at the Brooklyn Community Center. She designed the space that had marked her return to architecture. Vivienne Laurent officiated. 50 close friends attended. Marcus was not invited and did not cross her mind once that day. When Julian lifted her veil and whispered, Hello, extraordinary, Natasha smiled and whispered back, Hello, home, because that's what she'd finally found, not in a person or a building or an award, but in the unwavering certainty of her own worth. And that foundation, once rebuilt, could never be shaken again. As the reception began, a young architecture student approached her. Miss Reeves, your story helped me leave my boyfriend when he told me I wasn't talented enough. You showed me it's possible to start over. Natasha embraced her. Remember, you never needed anyone's permission to be extraordinary. You always were. The student's eyes brightened. I know that now. And in that moment, Natasha knew her greatest design wasn't a building at all. It was the blueprint for her own life. Drawn with courage, built with perseverance, and standing stronger than anything Marcus had ever tried to tear down. Thank you for watching this story of redemption and self-discovery. If it touched your heart, please subscribe to Mr. Cael Stories for more tales that inspire, uplift, and remind us of our own potential. Until next time, remember, you are the architect of your own life.